Of course, we've always been bombarded by advertising, that is, since the beginning of the 20th century and before that, but it became, of course, much more intensive in the second part of the 20th century. But I'm wondering, so how is this different, the use of social media? I mean, how is it different from the earlier periods or epochs of the use of advertising in general?
Yes, so the term fake news is a bit misleading, because we are experiencing fake news online and also fake attention generated by political bots and so on. There is no doubt that all of this exists. However, fake news is much older. Fake news is as old as tabloid media are, as the sensationalist press is. So since the start of the capitalist press, there have been fake news around. So already in the 19th century and earlier. And why fake news existed originally was also in order to make money out of news. So the more sensationalist the news were, the more people were watching and listening and so on. So it was all about circulation rates, reaching more and more audiences and so on. These companies, the media companies, depend on the advertising revenue, and if large companies invest lots of advertising, pay for lots of advertising in certain newspapers, television, radio stations, and so on, you can bet that they will not be criticized in these news media because otherwise the funding and the advertisement investments will be over. So that's an old story, that advertising and advertising-funded media are a threat to the public sphere as such. However, the way advertising is being organized has changed in the digital age and in the age of the internet. Advertising is now algorithmic. So traditional advertising is not algorithmic. The algorithms, it's based on large-scale real-time surveillance. All activities that we do online, on commercial platforms and also in other places, they are recorded and forever stored and analyzed. And this enables the targeting of advertising, so that different messages can be targeted at users based on their specific interests. So now, if you have people who target political messages, be it in an election campaign or elsewhere, it's perfectly possible to find your individually targeted audience. So in the social media environment, it therefore becomes possible that you target all Afro-American voters who are based in the US, which was unveiled in this New York Times story today. In a classical advertising environment, this of targeting is not possible. So it's based on real-time surveillance and algorithmic advertising, and that's something new, actually. Also, the traditionally broadcasting works in a much more centralized way. So you have one sender and many receivers. In the social media environment, the users become also producers of information. It's user-generated content has become a new phenomenon, which is also why the news that now exist are partly user-generated. However, to generate lots of content and to spread it, this is also a matter of time, because these things to create a message and to spread it online, time intensive, which is why so-called troll farms, they actually hire digital workers who are employed, to spread information online, to create fake accounts and so on. So it's not all algorithms that do this. There's also some labor involved that is, of course, low paid and so on.
Just finally, very briefly, in the little time that we have remaining, what can or should be done to protect ourselves as a society from this type of social media manipulation?
Most of the recommendations that are given by conventional conservative and liberal politicians are short-sighted. Yeah, they do not go to the root of the problem. Yeah. So although some media reforms could be taken, for example, in some countries in the world, there is a ban on political advertising, so that there can be no interference into election and political communication. Such bans of political advertising could also be extended to the online realm. Yeah. So this would actually help. Yeah. The conventional response sometimes is that there should be more fact-checking and so on. Fact-checking organizations, well, they are good organizations and so on. Yeah. So if there were a law that forces some of the social media companies that a certain share of their profits must be invested into the support of independent fact-checkers and non-profit oriented fact-checking organizations, then this might be helpful. Yeah. However, the basic problem that you have from a political economy point of view, targeted advertising is big business. Yeah, and Facebook, Google, Twitter, the business models of these companies are the basic problem, and also the fact that they are profit-oriented companies. So we would really need a shift away from online platforms that are organized for profit, that are also based on the on very superficial news, spreading of very superficial news. There's very little attention span to it. So we would need a different news culture that goes from fast food news, from highly accelerated news, towards a deceleration of news, more from fast news towards a slow news culture. So we need to take the speed out of the online culture also. How you do this is that we must also take the profit motive out of social media. So virtually all social media companies are for profit oriented. What I would like to see is more support for non-profit social media. Yeah, this hardly exists. It's the idea of platform cooperatives, so like a self-managed company that is a non-profit organization, a bit like Wikipedia. Wikipedia does not have any advertisements, but if you extend this idea of a non-profit organization, as we have it in the alternative news sector, I mean, Real News, yeah, and Democracy Now, and so on. These are serious alternative media that are not out there for making a profit, but for providing us with alternative news. So such alternative news sources should be strengthened and should be properly be supported. Yeah, but that's the sector of alternative media within civil society. Yeah, so something like Facebook or Twitter being run by a network of non-profit organizations. On the other hand, I think we need a public service internet. Non-profit public service media companies trying to run something like YouTube. Yeah? I mean, the public service media companies, like in the US, it's PBS. Yeah? In Europe, it's ARD. In Germany, it's BBC. In the UK, and so on. They should also start running their own platforms, also networks of platform. So what would be an alternative to YouTube would, for example, be a public service YouTube. Yeah? Something like a BBC tube, yeah, or a PBS tube, and so on. So in the end, we need to go from digital capitalism towards a non-profit model of how to organize online communication and political communication in general. In the end, we must overcome digital capitalism.
Okay, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. I was speaking to Christian Fuchs, Professor of Media and Communication Studies at the University of Westminster. Thanks again, Christian, for having joined us today.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
And thank you for joining the Real News Network. If you like Real News Network stories such as this one, please keep in mind that we have started our winter fundraiser and need your help to reach our goal of raising $400,000. Every dollar that you donate will be matched, and unlike practically all other news outlets, we do not accept support from governments or corporations. Please do what you can today.